Is NEDLAC's proposed 3.5 national minimum wage a living wage? Can South Africa afford a national minimum wage? What can be made of the recent increase of the minimum wage for domestic workers? What does the national minimum wage mean to small businesses and the unemployed? What time is it? It's question time. Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Rosalia Whitehead, standing in for Port Hedu. Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa announced the national proposed minimum wage last week. The 3,500 put on the table by the National Economic Development and Labour Council, NEDLAC, has triggered mixed reactions. Analysts disagree on whether the amount will help address the triple challenge of poverty, inequality and unemployment. Officials of the trade union federation Cosatu say they are unhappy that their proposed 4,500 rand amount was not adopted. Meanwhile, the Department of Labour announced an increase of the minimum wage for domestic workers earlier this month. The increase will be effective from Thursday, the 1st of December. We are live, therefore you can call us and view and air your views. The numbers to dial are 089 110 4210 or 002789 110 4201. My guests are Bheki Ntshalitshali, General Secretary at the Congress of South African Trade Unions, Cosatu, and Gerhard Papenfus from the National Employees Association of South Africa. Welcome to my guests. Mr. Ntshalitshali, can someone live on 3,500 rand?
I think it's difficult. The minimum living level standard put people between 4,500 to 600,000 as the minimum in which a family of four has to live. So the question of how you move to there, I think is a question of debate and the question of affordability. But that's where we were targeting.
Mr. Papenfus, can someone live on 3,500 rand?
No, I don't think so. Well, you know, an individual alone, one person might even struggle. The problem we're having is that people earning that wage not only sustain themselves, they in some cases sustain 6 to 10 other people. So when we're dealing with the issue of poverty, inequality, the biggest driver of those things are unemployment, and it's what you need is in a household you mustn't have one person sustaining 5, 6, 7, 8 other people. You must have people working, and the reason we say that we cannot afford this wage is that this is not going to do anything to alleviate the issue of unemployment. And the most vulnerable people will be exactly the people that will be negatively affected by this.
Mr. Ntshalitshali, is this how labor or business, can alleviate unemployment?
And I think we need to look to the report of the experts which try to answer these difficult questions. And they come to their own, in their own recommendation, they come up with a 3.5, which are still, I think, is still far below from the minimum living levels. And the question they have to answer the question as to whether if you put to the level in which they have put it, what is going to be the impact on unemployment. And the conclusion that they are making, which is still recommendation, we are going to debate when we go to NEDLAC, is that there will be likely a negative impact in terms of those things. In fact, they have the view that it's going to give money to the hands of those particular people, and if they are going to be using that money in their hands, it's going to be able to activate the economy, because whatever products we are making, somebody has to buy them. And if the people who are working, the working poor, have no money to deal with those or to buy those products, then we're going to be in that cycle for a very, very long time. So it's a positive step in the debate for introduction of the national minimum wage and put a floor on which no one should earn less.
But Mr. Ntshalitshali, is 3.5 what you envisaged when you entered the discussion?
No, the debate is still continuing. We're envisaging 4.5. That's what we are. That's what we are going to go back to the meeting next week and be able to engage, trying to influence the other social partners that still 4.5 can be affordable. If not now, we have then to look to mechanism, how we're going to be moving towards reaching the 4.5. Of course, it's not going to be a stagnant position. It's a moving target. We need to bring all the ideas and minds together, all the social partners, because the question of a living wage has long been concluded. We need a national minimum wage so that we can make a positive contribution to our economy.
Mr. Papenfus, how do you create employment? If not through this minimum wage, how do you create employment?
Well, a minimum wage cannot create employment. Business create employment, and there need to be a demand. There need to be a circle of demand and supply. That's how you create business. The minimum wage is not going to create any jobs. We can, however, lose jobs. The panel of experts has come up with a figure of 3,500. When this debate commenced 2 years ago, longer, the figures what was mentioned was 6,000. It came down to 4,500. They proposed a figure of 3,000, and I think my personal view is that's going to stay more or less on that figure, because the problem that we had with the debate so far is there was no figure. I mean, there's two elements to the debate. The one is, do we need a minimum wage? Can we afford it? And once that's settled, and we don't agree that we must have it, but apparently we've moved beyond that debate, then what is the figure? Now, they reckon that if you have it on 3,500, there will be job losses, but there won't be as many job losses. So there's already an admission. Now, so the lowest part, the lowest, most vulnerable workers might lose their jobs.
Sorry, Mr. Papenfus, I have to interrupt you there. We have a call on the line. Kenneth from Polokwane.
Hello.
Kenneth, please ask your question.
Yeah, the question is whether it's on newspaper or not. I is very sorry, because now we have people that are in more than there. They are in more than 3.5.
I'm sorry, Kenneth, we can't hear you. Please, can you call again? Mr. Papenfus, please continue.
Your lowest paid workers that's in the job might lose their jobs. But that doesn't at all address the issue of the 9 million people that's unemployed, which want to have to access the market. That is not addressed, and that is our biggest problem. Business, to a large extent, won't be so much affected by this, because many businesses are paying much more than that. They say 47% of the workforce, business is paying less than that. 47% of the workforce is earning less than that. That just illustrates the problem of how many people, how many small businesses will have to adjust their wages. We know that even fixed wages currently in the taxi industry, in retail, hospitality, this industry will, in the next 2 years, will have to adjust their wages between 20 and 30%, up to 30%. Now, can they do that? That's the question. We don't know. Now, how do you do it? You either, if you can't adjust, you will dismiss. Where you can't dismiss, you will have the price, the increased wage price, you will have that introduced and accommodated in the commodity. The price of food will go up. So the same guy that's earning more to pay for bread and milk, etc., will pay more for bread and milk.
We have another call. I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Kenneth, please go ahead with your question.
Hello.
Hi, Kenneth. Go ahead with your question. Johnny, please go ahead with your question.
I just want to, to comment. The first question that you have raised in the show was that is 3.5 sufficient? Is it a sufficient minimum wage? Now, I ask myself the question, why do you ask that question? Because the very same 3,500 that is proposed by the Deputy President is not yet achieved. We are having so many workers from Checkers and Shoprite who are less than 0.5, and there are so many public servants who are working under 3.5. Now, the question that I'm raising is that is it not premature to ask that question and propose 4.5 whereas 3.5 is not yet reached. And we also understand that the CEO has got 100 million, where the 50 million is the basic salary, 50 million is the bonus, whereas workers at the ground, the grassroots level are yet less than 2,500.
Thanks so much, Johnny. Please keep your questions and your calls coming through. After the break, we continue this discussion on the proposed minimum wage. Welcome back to Question Time. Just before we went to the break, Johnny asked a question about whether my question on the 3,000 Rand minimum wage, if it was not premature, based on the fact that you find that a CEO earns a lot more money than the lowest paid worker. Mr. Papenfus, can you take that question?
The difference between pay between workers and CEOs, you know, the day you decide you want to go into business, you adopt the risk. You put on everything on the line, and you want reward for that. So that's the one thing. So of course there will be a difference. Business need to make money. We don't need less good and rich businesses. We need many, many more. When you have good businesses, strong businesses, those businesses can decide whether they want to pay workers good or poorly. They can decide. If they are weak business, they can only pay poorly. So we need good businesses, we need many rich people, and we need to allow them to pay what they want, because business only pay what they want. They base it on what they want to pay, what you can afford, on productivity, the global market. You can't just walk in and decide, I'm going to pay so much. There's a lot of factors that determine price. The moment you move out of that scenario, you have unemployment. So, you know, we compete with people like China, Vietnam, Kenya. The minimum wage in Kenya, and I know people say all the countries in the world have minimum wages. The minimum wage in Kenya is a tenth, and we compete with them. People will close their businesses here and they will open the businesses in Kenya. In fact, they will go across the border into Lesotho in the textile industry.
I'm sorry, Mr. Papenfus, we've got another caller.
Yeah.
Ali, please state your question.
Good evening, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks, and you?
I'd like to ask that guy of Cosatu, the General Secretary of Cosatu. He said that they were looking for a minimum wage of 4,500. That guy, I don't believe him, because they are supporting Cyril Ramaphosa, and that issue of 3.5 comes from Cyril Ramaphosa. How is going to deal with that 4,500? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ntshalitshali, how are you going to deal with the question of increasing that proposed minimum wage?
I think firstly we must indicate that the proposal of 3.5 is not coming from Cyril Ramaphosa. It's coming from the panel of experts that we talk about by all businesses, all labor and all communities, with the people with an experience, guided by the ILO to look to international standard as to how best can we address the levels of the national minimum wage. Cosatu came up with its proposal, business with its proposal, and community, including government. We're in a process of negotiations. In a process of negotiations, you may get what you want, you may not get what you want, you may end up with with a compromise in dealing with those issues. The process is still going on. The panel of experts have not made a decision. They've made a recommendation. And very soon we're going to go back to NEDLAC. Like any other negotiation and engagement, you have to motivate, you have to win the other side, because this is a negotiation. This is not a decree by a government that is going to make it. You want to make something that works. You want it something that is going to be buy-in by all social partners, because we know national minimum wage is not a voluntary thing. When you make money, it's not easy to give money away. So business has to be helped in terms of arriving to those particular issues. We've been involved in the vulnerable workers, in the domestic workers. When we proposed in the domestic workers, nobody accepted that particular level. But over time, and people start to realize, and there's a lot of studies, that any economic recovery has to be income-led. You need to sell your products to people. Somebody has to buy your products.
I'm afraid I have to interrupt you there. Nhlanhla, please state your question.
All right.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Yes. Please go ahead.
I think we are being ingenuine. There's a little bit of ingenuity here. The gentleman from Cosatu and the gentleman from business, they are not being honest with people. For example, a person who works at Pick and Pay, for example, they earn less than 3,000. They can't even afford to buy groceries in that shop to feed their family with the 3,000 from, let's say, the 3,000 that is proposed. For example, I used to work for an employer myself who would buy food for his dog a month that was about 5,000, and I was earning less than 5,000. And a human being is being paid less than the amount that the rich people use to look after their pets. That's the limit. Business, the gentleman from business said that if you will give people more money, they won't be able to sustain other jobs because we have to subsidize these people. But let me ask you something. If you pay somebody and they spend money, it seems like here in South Africa we have a problem. Our economics is a little bit skewed, or it does not really, it's not practical economics. Because if you give people money, people are going to spend that money into the same economy. That means that money can be able to drive more jobs and support more other jobs. Look at Sweden, for example, that practices grants.
Oh, I'm afraid Ntshalitshali has gone there. Mr. Ntshalitshali, I think our viewers are really concerned about the difference in what you had proposed and the 3,500. I think there's a huge gap between where you have to get to.
Indeed. I mean, that's how the struggle continues in terms of what you propose and how you are going to get it there. Cosatu have not dished the question of 4.5 because it's scientifically informed that it is a minimal living levels that people have to get to feed the family of 5 in terms of dealing with those issues. You have to gradually go in there. The difference that people may not understand is that the Federation set a policy. This is the policy that we are seeking. And that policy are not replacing union. Union got the responsibility to go to their sectors and negotiate for the members who pay their dues in regard to those particularly. This is not a decent work, as you have been asking in your question. This is not a living wage. This is a national minimum wage which nobody should be earning less than that one. Once you get the flow correct, then you empower everybody to engage and see how best to deal with those issues. But in addition to the question that was asked about the CEOs and other people in dealing with the inequality, because you can't get people earning too high and others earning too low. This is the indication and the introduction to a wage policy. We have to debate those issues as we move along. What should be the gap between the two? All the people are buying in the same shop. I think that's what was made by one caller. It does not discriminate that because you are earning less, you got a discount in terms of what you are buying.
I'm afraid we've got another question, Mr. Ntshalitshali. Please go ahead with your question, Phumzile.
Okay. How are you, ma'am?
Well, thanks. Please go ahead with your question.
Yes. My question, in fact, is just a comment or the question to both gentlemen that are in the studio. The employer, one, and the federation representative. When they look and sit down, in fact, it is even directed to the government. How on earth do you think people can survive on 3,000, 2,000, like on 3,500? Because if you can look at the employer, because I know NEASA is the worst employer that we as workers we have ever dealt with. If you can look at the employer, that is not even his petrol expenditure for a month. Even Bheki can attest on that. 3,500, it's not enough. And you know what worries me the most is the fact that all this 3,500 is directed to black people. Because it's black people that to like earn peanuts. White employees or white workers, they are earning more than they are supposed to earn. The gentleman that is in front of us, which is the NEASA Papenfus, can bear testimony on that, or he can attest on that white people, they are earning more than what the government is even proposing now. So how do you think black people can survive with 3,500? You can just imagine you have to look after 12 people that are depending on you as the breadwinner of the family.
Thanks so much, Phumzile. Mr. Papenfus, can you respond to that question?
Yeah, you know, perhaps we must make the minimum wage 10,000 rand, and the problem is you won't get a job for 10,000 rand. So it will just be a figure. Business will pay what they can afford. That is the bottom line. You can set any figure. Now, what the panel of experts have tried to set a standard, a threshold, to make it at least attractive to business.
Yes, but Mr. Papenfus, I think what a lot of employees are asking for is that there is at least a consideration for them as workers, that you are considered about where they live and how they live.
Well, of course. I mean, this is already business. You know, it's a huge pleasure for a businessman to pay his employees well, if he can afford it. But let me just give you one scenario. If you have a domestic worker in a very rich area earning 10,000 rand a month, she employs at her house another domestic worker for 1,500. She will have to dismiss that worker now. So are we saying through the minimum wage that if you're prepared to work for less, the answer will be no? There's 9 million unemployed people and very vulnerable people that will never have the opportunity to work. There are children growing up that will never see a parent work. There will be people in South Africa that will never work in their whole lives because the freedom of contracting between an employer and employee is now out of the window. So if somebody comes to you and he says, I'm prepared to work for less, and I say, I can only afford so much, and I'm prepared, the employees here, to work for less, now I must turn you away. I think that is criminal. We cannot afford it. We're a developing country with an unofficial employment rate of about 40%. Now, how on earth are we going to incorporate that 40%? We need to do many other things. The last thing that we should have done at this stage is a minimum wage. We should have taken steps to incorporate those people into the market. And instead of one person paying for a whole household for 3,500, even 4,500, we must have many people in that household who actually have jobs. That's what we must do.
Thank you so much, Mr. Papenfus. Last comment from you, Mr. Ntshalitshali.
I think the national minimum wage, there's a lot of studies that have been conducted. It has taken people from poverty. You can just look at Brazil. At some point in time, it was the worst country in equality. It has moved. It has created jobs, and it's working. I mean, so there's a studies that says, give the money to the people who are working. They're able to buy your product, but also to address the other issues raised. In the panel of expert debate, they are not only talking about the question of the national minimum wage, they're talking about social wage, they're talking about comprehensive social security. There are issues that government can be able to do to elevate what business might be able to pay. But we think and we believe 4.5 is scientific, it can be affordable, it can create jobs for the future.
I'm afraid time is up. Thank you so much to my guests for coming through. And that was Question Time today. A big thank you to my guests and to you at home for watching. Thank you so much. Good night.